I never imagined that standing in the gilded halls of power in Tehran, negotiating treaties and representing my nation before the world, I would one day risk everything for a man named Jesus. My name is, well, for the safety of those I left behind, you'll understand why I cannot reveal it. But what I can tell you is a story that still amazes me, how the God I once denied pursued me relentlessly until I had no choice but to surrender. Tonight, I want to share with you the secret life I lived for 3 years, praying to Jesus in the bathroom of the Foreign Ministry, hiding a Bible in diplomatic pouches, and ultimately making the choice that cost me everything I had built and gave me everything I never knew I needed. You need to understand something from the beginning. In Iran, apostasy from Islam doesn't just mean social embarrassment or family disappointment. It means death. Article 167 of our Penal Code is very clear about this. I've sat in meetings where we discuss such cases. I've read the files. I've seen the photographs of what happens to those who abandon Islam for Christianity. The hangings are public sometimes. A warning to others. A spectacle of loyalty enforcement. So when I tell you I became a Christian while serving in one of the most sensitive positions in the Iranian government, I'm not talking about a simple change of religious preference. I'm talking about signing my own death warrant every single day I woke up and chose to follow Jesus. Every morning I put on my suit, straightened my tie, and walked into the Foreign Ministry. I was technically a dead man walking. The question you might be asking is why? What could possibly be worth that risk? What did I encounter that made me willing to trade everything, my career, my reputation, my family, my country, even my life, for a faith that the world I inhabited considered the ultimate betrayal? That's what I want to tell you tonight. But I need to start at the beginning, because you can't understand the miracle of what happened without first understanding the man I was. The world I came from. The beliefs I held with absolute certainty. The power I wielded. And the emptiness I never admitted to anyone, not even myself. This is not a story with easy answers. It's not a story where everything makes sense from the start. There were moments when I questioned my own sanity. Moments when I begged God, whichever God was listening, to take away the doubts, to let me go back to the comfortable certainty I once had. Moments when I stood in the shower at midnight, water running to mask the sound of my sobbing, asking myself what kind of madness had taken hold of me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Back to before the doubts. Before the questions. Before the bathroom prayers and the hidden Bible. Back to when I was absolutely certain of who I was and what I believed. Back to when I was still blind. I was born in 1972, 7 years before the revolution that would reshape Iran and, in ways I couldn't imagine then, would eventually reshape me. My family was religious, yes, but more importantly, we were educated. Cultured. My father was a professor of Persian literature at Tehran University. My grandfather had been an imam, respected in our community, known for his wisdom and his kindness. He died when I was 12, but I still remember his voice when he recited the Quran. It was like honey. Like music. My mother came from a family of merchants. Wealthy. Connected. She made sure we understood that faith and success were not opposites. That serving God and achieving greatness in this world could walk hand in hand. She had ambitions for me. Big ambitions. When the revolution came in 1979, I was 7 years old. Old enough to remember the chaos, but young enough that the new Islamic Republic was simply the world I grew up in. It was normal to me. The hijabs, the religious police, the Friday prayers, the revolutionary slogans painted on walls, this was just life. I didn't question it any more than you question the air you breathe. My father navigated the new system carefully. He kept his position at the university by proving his loyalty, by teaching Persian literature through the lens of Islamic values, by never publicly questioning anything. He taught me a valuable lesson. In Iran, survival requires mastery of the surface. Show them what they want to see. Keep your private thoughts private. I was a good student. Exceptional, actually. I memorized Quran verses with ease. I loved debate, philosophy, and history. At 16, I won a national competition in Islamic studies. The prize was a meeting with a government minister. That was the moment I first tasted what power felt like. The way people looked at you when you stood next to someone important. The way doors opened. I wanted more of that. I studied international relations at Shahid Beheshti University. Top of my class. Fluent in English, Arabic, and French by the time I graduated. The foreign ministry recruited me immediately. This was 1994. I was 22 years old, and I genuinely believed I was going to change the world. My first posting was to our embassy in Ankara. Junior level, mostly consular work, but I was learning. Watching. Understanding how the game was played. I saw how Western diplomats operated. Their arrogance. Their assumption of moral superiority. It disgusted me, honestly. They spoke of human rights and democracy while their governments bombed Muslim countries and supported dictators who served their interests. The hypocrisy was stunning. I became very good at my job. I could negotiate, compromise, find common ground while never surrendering our core positions. I made my superiors look good. By the time I was 30, I was back in Tehran, working directly in the foreign ministry headquarters. By 35, I was leading delegations to international conferences. I married at 29. A good match. She came from a family similar to mine, educated, religious, well-connected. Her father had connections to the Guardian Council. Our wedding was at one of the finest hotels in Tehran. Over 500 guests. The deputy foreign minister attended. I remember standing there in my suit, my bride beside me in her white dress and hijab, thinking I've made it. This is success. This is what purpose looks like. We had 2 daughters. Beautiful girls. I loved them deeply, though I didn't see them as much as I should have. My career consumed me. There were always meetings, always trips, always crises to manage. My wife understood. Or at least, she said she did. This was the bargain we'd made. Sacrifice for a greater purpose. Service to the nation. Service to Islam. I prayed 5 times a day. Well, 4 times on busy days. Sometimes 3. But I always prayed. I fasted during Ramadan. I gave zakat. I went to Friday prayers when I was in Tehran. I wasn't a perfect Muslim, who is, but I was a sincere one. Or so I believed. The truth is, I had constructed a life that looked successful from every angle. Career advancing. Family growing. Faith maintained. Respect earned. I represented the Islamic Republic of Iran at the United Nations in Geneva. I sat across from American diplomats and European foreign ministers. I defended our nuclear program, our regional policies, our internal affairs with eloquence and conviction. I was living the dream my mother had imagined for me. The life my grandfather would have blessed. The life that proved you could be modern and Muslim, educated and faithful, powerful and pious. I was also completely empty inside. But I couldn't admit that. Not to anyone. Not even to myself. Because admitting emptiness would mean admitting that everything I'd worked for, everything I believed, everything I was, might be wrong. And that possibility was too terrifying to consider. So I pushed it down. Buried it beneath another success, another promotion, another international trip where important people sought my opinion. I mistook achievement for meaning. Busyness for purpose. The approval of men for the pleasure of God. I had no idea that God was already watching me. Already preparing to tear down every wall I'd built. Already moving pieces into position for an encounter that would destroy and remake me. I had no idea my comfortable lies were about to collide with an uncomfortable truth. And it started in the most unlikely place. At a reception in Brussels. With a glass of orange juice. And a man whose eyes held something I'd never seen before. The reception was standard diplomatic theater. European Union officials, various ambassadors, economic ministers. The kind of event where everyone smiles and says nothing of substance. I'd been to hundreds of them. I could navigate these rooms in my sleep. I was standing near the refreshment table. I don't drink alcohol, obviously, with my glass of orange juice, halfway through a conversation with a French trade delegate about agricultural tariffs, when someone touched my elbow. Light touch. Polite. I turned and found myself facing a man I'd seen across the room earlier. Older than me. Maybe late 50s. Well-dressed. His badge identified him as part of the Dutch diplomatic corps. "Forgive the interruption," he said in perfect English. "I'm Henrik. I've wanted to speak with you all evening. Your presentation this afternoon on Middle Eastern stability was remarkable. Truly. The way you framed the historical context, I've rarely heard it articulated so clearly." I thanked him. "Accept the compliment the way you do in these situations. Smooth. Modest. Professional." We talked about the conference, about regional politics, about the usual safe topics. He was intelligent. Well informed. But there was something else. A quality I couldn't quite name. He listened differently than other diplomats. Like he actually cared about what I was saying, not just waiting for his turn to speak. After maybe 15 minutes, as our conversation was winding down, he did something strange. He asked me, "Are you happy?" Just like that. Out of nowhere. "Are you happy?" I laughed. Thought he was joking. "What kind of question is that?" "An important one," he said. And his face was completely serious. "You're clearly successful. Talented. Respected. But are you happy? When you're alone, when there's no one to perform for, are you at peace?" I should have walked away. I should have given some diplomatic deflection and excused myself. But something in his question, or maybe something in me, made me hesitate. Made me actually consider it. "I'm content," I said finally. "I have a purpose. Family. Work that matters." "That's not what I asked?" His voice was gentle. Not accusing. Just clear. "I asked if you're happy? If you have peace." I looked at this man I'd just met, this Dutch diplomat whose name I'd forget by tomorrow, and felt something crack open inside me. Just a hairline fracture. Barely noticeable. But there. "Why do you ask?" My voice sounded defensive even to my own ears. He smiled. A sad smile. Understanding. "Because I spent 20 years of my life looking exactly like you. Successful. Purposeful. Slowly dying inside. And I wondered if maybe you might be where I was. Before." "Before what?" "Before I met Jesus." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Of course. Of course, that's where this was going. Another Christian trying to convert the Muslim diplomat. I'd encountered this before. Americans mostly. Evangelical Christians who saw every Muslim as a mission field. It was annoying, but I'd learned to handle it with polite firmness. "I appreciate your concern," I said, already planning my exit. "But I have my own faith. Islam has given me everything I need." "Has it?" He wasn't pushy. Wasn't argumentative. Just asked the question and let it sit there between us. "Has it really given you peace? Or has it given you rules and rituals and the constant anxiety that you're never quite good enough?" That hit closer than I wanted to admit. I felt my jaw tighten. He must have seen it because he immediately softened. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend. I see something in your eyes. A search. And I remember that search. That's all." Someone called his name from across the room. He glanced over, then back to me. From his pocket, he pulled out a business card. Handed it to me. "If you ever want to talk, really talk, not diplomat talk, my email is there. No pressure. No strings. Just an offer. One searching soul to another." He walked away before I could respond. Left me standing there holding his card, my orange juice going warm in my other hand, my heart beating faster than it should. I threw the card away that night. Tossed it in the hotel room trash. Buried it under other papers so I wouldn't see it. Told myself it was presumptuous, arrogant, typical Western Christian imperialism. Told myself I was fine. Faithful. Fulfilled. But I couldn't stop thinking about his question. Are you happy? Are you at peace? Over the next weeks, back in Tehran, back in my routine, that question followed me. Haunted me. I'd be in a meeting about sanctions policy and suddenly remember, are you at peace? I'd be at Friday prayers, bowing, forehead to the ground, and the question would echo, are you happy? I started noticing things I'd trained myself not to notice. The fear in people's eyes when religious police walked by. The way my colleagues spoke differently when we thought the room might be monitored versus when we felt safe. The casual cruelty of the system we served. The way women were treated. The way dissent was crushed. The executions that we justified as Islamic justice. I'd always known these things intellectually. But I'd never let myself feel them. Never let myself question whether this was truly what God wanted. Never asked whether a faith that required this much fear and force and violence to maintain itself might be wrong. That was the forbidden thought. The one I couldn't allow. But it kept coming back. There was an incident. 3 months after Brussels. A file crossed my desk. Just routine circulation of internal security reports. We got them sometimes, keeping diplomatic corps informed about potential security concerns. This one was about arrests in Shiraz. Underground church. 15 people detained. The file included photos. I'd seen these before. Usually I just skimmed them. Noted the information. Moved on. But this time, something made me look closer at the photographs. The faces of the arrested Christians. I don't know what I expected to see. Fear, maybe? Defiance. Anger. But what I saw was something else entirely. This one woman, middle-aged, being led away by Vivek officers. She was smiling. Not a fake smile. Not a defiant smile. A genuine smile. Like she had a secret. Like she knew something the officers didn't. How do you smile when you're being arrested for a crime that could get you killed? I stared at that photo for a long time. Too long. My secretary knocked on my door twice before I heard her. I closed the file. Filed it away. I tried to forget it. Couldn't. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my laptop. I made sure I was using a VPN. We all had them for accessing blocked sites when traveling, though we weren't supposed to use them in Iran. And I typed into the search bar, why do Christians in Iran refuse to recant? Just research, I told myself. Professional interest. Understanding the opposition. That's all. I read testimonies. Dozens of them. Christians who'd been imprisoned, tortured, threatened with death. Given every opportunity to simply say they weren't Christian anymore. To go back to Islam. Save themselves. And they wouldn't do it. One man wrote, they can take my life, but they cannot take Jesus from me. He is more real than my own breath. More precious than my own children. I would rather die with him than live without him. I read that sentence maybe 20 times. More real than your own breath. I thought about my own faith. Would I die for it? I'd always assumed yes. Assumed that if push came to shove, I'd give my life rather than deny Islam. But if I was honest, really honest, I wasn't sure. Not because I was a coward. But because I wasn't sure my faith was real enough. Deep enough. Real enough to die for. These Christians were dying for their faith. Actually dying. Not hypothetically. And they seemed almost joyful about it. What did they know that I didn't? I started reading more. Started with articles about persecution. Moved to articles about Christian theology. I kept telling myself this was research. Professional development. Understanding the enemy. But even as I told myself these lies, I knew I was searching for something. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Something I was desperately afraid I might find. Then one night, I remember this so clearly, it was maybe 4 a.m. I couldn't sleep, my wife was in the bedroom and I was in my study. I found myself on a website that had the Bible in Farsi. The New Testament. My hand hovered over the mouse. This was dangerous. Just accessing this could be tracked. Could be questioned. But I was behind a VPN. And besides, I was senior enough that small anomalies in my internet usage wouldn't trigger immediate concern. I had some protection. Some freedom. I clicked. The Gospel of Matthew opened. I started reading. Told myself I'd read a few verses. Just to see what Christians actually believed from their own source, not filtered through Islamic teaching about what Christians believed. I read the entire thing in one sitting. All 20 chapters. As dawn broke over Tehran, I sat in my study, light creeping through the curtains, and finished the last verses of Matthew. Jesus' final words to his disciples. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. I closed the laptop. Sat in the gray morning light. My hands were shaking. This wasn't the Jesus I'd learned about in Islamic teaching. In Islam, Jesus Isa was a prophet. Important, yes. Born of a virgin, performed miracles, yes. But just a man. A messenger. Not divine. Not God. The idea that God would become human was shirk, the worst possible sin. Associating partners with Allah. Unthinkable. Unforgivable. But the Jesus in Matthew's Gospel wasn't claiming to be a prophet among prophets. He was claiming to be God. All authority in heaven and earth. Present with his followers until the end of time. This was either the worst blasphemy imaginable, or it was true. And if it was true, everything I believed was wrong. Everything I built my life on was sand. Everything I was serving was a lie. I put my head in my hands. Actually groaned. Said out loud, to the empty room, no. No, this is madness. I'm just tired. Stressed. This is a spiritual attack. Shaitan is trying to mislead me. That's what we were taught. Doubt is from Satan. Questions are dangerous. When you feel your faith wavering, double down. Pray more. Read more Quran. Fast. Trust what you've been taught. Don't think for yourself, that path leads to hell. So that's what I did. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into Islamic practice with renewed vigor. Prayed 5 times every day, no exceptions. Read the Quran every morning and evening. I attended extra lectures at the mosque. Listened to sermons about the dangers of Christianity, the deceptions of the Bible, the absolute truth of Islam. I was trying to kill the doubt. Drown it in religious activity. Make it go away through sheer force of will. It didn't work. Because now I'd seen something I couldn't unsee. Read words I couldn't unread. The question Henrik had asked me in Brussels had opened a door, and the woman's smile in the arrest photo had pulled me through it, and now the words of Jesus himself were echoing in my mind and I couldn't make them stop. I was terrified. Genuinely terrified. Not just of what might happen if anyone found out about my questions, but what might happen if I kept following them. Where they might lead. What I might have to admit. What I might have to give up. I remember one evening, maybe a month after I'd first read Matthew, I was driving home from the ministry. Tehran traffic, everyone honking, chaos everywhere. I was stopped at a light. And I just started crying. Right there in my car. Tears running down my face. I didn't even know why. Or maybe I knew exactly why and couldn't admit it. I looked up through my windshield at the sky. Almost black with pollution, but you could still see it was sunset. The call to prayer started from a nearby mosque. I'd heard that call tens of thousands of times in my life. It was the soundtrack of my existence. But this time, I heard it differently. It felt empty. Like music without meaning. Words without truth. And in the silence beneath it, I heard something else. Not with my ears. In my chest. My soul. A voice I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Just 3 words. Come to me. That's all. Come to me. I drove home. Kissed my daughters. I had dinner with my wife. Acted completely normal. But inside, everything had changed. The earthquake had started. Small tremors at first. But I knew that something much bigger was coming. Something that would bring down everything. And the terrifying part wasn't that I was afraid of it. The terrifying part was that some buried, secret part of me was hoping for it. I want it. I need it. Even if it destroyed me. Over the next 6 months, I lived 2 lives. The public life, the one everyone could see, continued as normal. More successful than ever, actually. I was appointed to lead a major negotiation with European partners about economic cooperation. High profile. Career-defining. My photograph appeared in newspapers. My wife was proud. My daughters drew pictures of me in my suit, standing at podiums. But the private life, the real life, was unraveling. I kept reading the Bible. Secretly. Carefully. I'd download sections to my phone, read them in bathroom stalls at the ministry, delete them immediately after. I read the other Gospels, Mark, Luke, John. I read Acts, watching the early church explode across the Roman world despite persecution. I read Paul's letters, dense theology that I had to read 3 times to understand, but when I understood it, it was like light breaking through darkness. The Sermon on the Mount destroyed me. Actually destroyed me. I remember reading it for the first time, sitting in my parked car in an underground garage, and having to grip the steering wheel because my hands were shaking so badly. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. This wasn't religion. This wasn't rules and regulations and ritual purity and religious performance. This was something completely different. This was an upside-down kingdom where the weak were strong and the mourning were blessed, and the ones who admitted their spiritual poverty were the ones who got heaven. I'd spent my entire life trying to be strong, successful, powerful, righteous through my own efforts. And here was Jesus saying that wasn't the path at all. That the path was admitting you were broken. Admitting you needed help. Admitting you couldn't save yourself. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Do not judge. Forgive 70 times 7. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Seek first the kingdom of God. I'd never heard anything like this. Nothing in Islam compared. Nothing in any philosophy I'd studied. This was either the ravings of a madman or the words of God Himself. And I was beginning to suspect, with growing terror and growing hope, that it was the latter. I started trying to pray to Jesus. Awkwardly at first. Feeling like a traitor. Feeling like I was committing the unforgivable sin. But also feeling like I was finally talking to someone who was actually there. Who actually heard me. Who actually cared. In Islam, Allah was distant. Transcendent. You submitted to Him, obeyed His laws, hoped for His mercy. But there was no relationship. No intimacy. No conversation. Prayer was recitation, not communication. But when I prayed to Jesus, something different happened. I can't explain it rationally. I just knew I wasn't alone. That someone was there. That I was being heard. That I was, for the first time in my life, having an actual conversation with God. I would lock my office door during lunch, sit on the floor with my back against the wall, and whisper, Jesus, if you're real, if you're really God, I need you to show me. I need to know. I can't keep living like this. I'm going crazy. Please. Please show me the truth. And He did. Not in a dramatic vision. Not in a voice from heaven. But in 1,000 small ways. In the peace that would wash over me when I read His words. In the way Scripture would answer questions I hadn't even asked yet. In the gradual, undeniable sense that I was being known. seen, loved. Not because of what I'd accomplished, or how well I performed, but just because I was his. That was the word that kept coming to me. I was his. I belonged to Jesus. Had always belonged to him. He'd been waiting for me my entire life. Waiting for me to stop running. Stop pretending. Stop trying to save myself. Waiting for me to just come home. But coming home meant leaving everything else behind. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Wasn't ready to face what belief in Jesus would cost me. So I existed in this terrible limbo. Believing but not confessing. Knowing the truth but not living it. Loving Jesus in secret while serving a system that hated him. It was eating me alive. There was one particular incident that forced my hand. We were in a meeting, senior diplomatic staff, discussing responses to international criticism about our treatment of religious minorities. Someone brought up the case of a pastor who'd been imprisoned for running a house church. The discussion was about how to spin it for Western media. How to justify it. Make it sound reasonable. I sat there listening to my colleagues talk about this man, this pastor, like he was a problem to be managed. A threat to be neutralized. And I realized, with absolute clarity, that they were talking about someone like me. Someone who'd encountered Jesus and couldn't keep quiet about it. Someone whose faith was more important than their safety. They were talking about who I was becoming. And if they knew, they'd be having the same conversation about me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that pastor in prison. About the Christians I'd seen in those arrest photos. About Henrik in Brussels who'd had the courage to ask a Muslim diplomat if he was happy. About the martyrs I'd read about who chose death over denial. And I thought about Jesus. About how he hadn't stayed in heaven where it was safe. How he'd come down. Become human. I walked into the mess. Let himself be rejected, beaten, murdered. And why? The answer echoed in my head. For me. For me. He did it for me. How could I keep hiding? How could I keep living a lie when Jesus had died to set me free? What kind of coward was I? At 3 a.m, I got out of bed. I went to my study. Closed the door. And I got on my knees. Actually got down on my knees on the floor, something I'd never done even in Islamic prayer. And I said the words out loud for the first time. Jesus, I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you died for my sins. I believe you rose from the dead. I'm sorry for everything I've done wrong. I'm sorry for living a lie. I'm sorry for serving the wrong things. I surrender. I'm yours. I'm completely yours. Whatever it costs. Whatever happens. I'm yours. I stayed on my knees. Crying. Shaking. Terrified. Free. I can't describe what happened at that moment. It wasn't dramatic. There was no light from heaven. No audible voice. Just this overwhelming sense of peace. Of rightness. Of coming home after being lost for 43 years. I belonged to Jesus. Finally, fully. Officially. And everything else, everything I'd been afraid of losing, suddenly seemed less important. Still painful. Still real. But less important. Because I had him. And he was enough. The question now was what to do about it. I couldn't just announce my conversion. That would be suicide, literally. And it wouldn't just affect me. My family would be destroyed. My wife would be pressured to divorce me. My daughters would be ostracized. My extended family would face suspicion, harassment. I needed wisdom. I needed help. I needed to figure out how to navigate this impossible situation. I remembered Henrik. The Dutch diplomat. I'd thrown away his card, but I remembered his name. It took me 2 days of careful searching, using my VPN, accessing records, to find his email address. I wrote to him. Keep it vague. Said I wanted to continue our conversation from Brussels. Asked if we could speak privately. He responded within 12 hours. Gave me a secure communication method. We set up an encrypted video call for the following week. When his face appeared on my screen, he smiled. That same knowing smile. Like he'd been expecting this. "You found him, didn't you?" That was the first thing he said. Not hello. Not how you are. Just, "You found him." I nodded. Couldn't speak for a moment. Then, yes. I found him. Or he found me. I'm not sure which. He's the one who does the finding. We just stop hiding. Over the next months, Henrik became my lifeline. We talked every week, sometimes more. He connected me with others who could help, people experienced in supporting secret believers in hostile countries. He sent me resources, discipleship materials, books disguised as business documents in diplomatic pouches. He explained that I wasn't alone. That there were thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of secret believers in Iran. Muslims who'd come to Christ but couldn't openly confess it. Living in the shadows. Praying in secret. Hungry for fellowship and teaching and encouragement. He helped me understand that while God wanted me to be honest about my faith eventually, wisdom meant being strategic about timing. That there might be ways to serve the underground church, to help other believers, to advance the kingdom of God without immediately declaring myself publicly and ending my usefulness along with my life. So I started living a different kind of double life. Not the tormented limbo of before, but a purposeful strategy. I was a Christian serving in a Muslim government. An insider with access and influence, and the ability to help in ways outsiders never could. I used my diplomatic immunity to smuggle Bibles into Iran. Not many at first. Just a few. Hidden in my personal luggage after international trips. Carefully distributed to believers I'd been put in contact with. I used my position to advocate, quietly, for leniency in certain cases involving religious minorities. Not openly. Not in ways that would expose me. But in meetings, in private conversations, I'd plant seeds. Raise questions. Make arguments for mercy that wouldn't seem suspicious coming from me. I started attending an underground church. Just once every few weeks when I could do it safely. Meeting in different locations each time. Basements. Apartments. Once in a warehouse. Never more than 15 or 20 people. Always afraid. Always watching. But also experiencing something I'd never known in Islam, genuine fellowship. Unity. Love that wasn't based on ethnicity or nationality or shared political ideology, but on shared faith in Jesus. These were some of the bravest people I'd ever met. Working class mostly. Risking everything. And they welcomed me, this government official, this former persecutor of their faith, with open arms. With tears. With joy. I was baptized in a bathroom. Literally in a bathroom, in a bathtub, by a former addict who'd found Jesus in prison. It was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. Going under that water. Coming up. Being welcomed into the family of God by people who had every reason to hate people like me but instead loved me because Jesus loved me. I lived that way for 3 years. Christian in secret. Diplomat in public. It was complicated. Dangerous. Exhausting. But also purposeful in a way my life had never been before. I was finally doing what I was made for. Finally serving the true God. Finally using my gifts and position and access for something eternal. But I knew it couldn't last forever. I knew that eventually, I'd have to make a choice. To stay or to leave. To keep hiding or to declare myself. To continue being useful while compromised or to be fully honest and lose everything. The decision was made for me. There was a crackdown. Vivek had been tracking the underground church for months. They'd infiltrated some groups. Gained information. Built cases. One night they struck. Dozens of arrests across Tehran. Coordinated. Comprehensive. Some of the people I knew, people I'd worshipped with, were arrested. Including the man who'd baptized me. I found out the next morning. Saw the reports. Saw the names. My blood went cold. Because I knew what they'd do to those people. I knew the interrogation techniques, the torture, the pressure. And I knew that eventually, under enough pain, people talk. They give names, locations, details. My name would come up. It was inevitable. I had maybe 3 days before they connected me to the underground church. Maybe less. I went home that night. I looked at my wife, my daughters, my comfortable apartment, my successful life. And I knew I was looking at it for the last time. I couldn't tell my wife the truth. She was a faithful Muslim. She'd be obligated to report me. And even if she didn't, knowing would put her in danger. I had to protect her the only way I could, by leaving her in the dark. I told her I had an urgent diplomatic trip. Emergency negotiations in Europe. I'd be gone for a few days, maybe a week. She believed me. Why wouldn't she? I've taken hundreds of trips. This was normal. I kissed my daughters goodbye. Hold them maybe a second too long. Memorize their faces. Their laughs. The way they smelled like shampoo and innocence. I didn't know if I'd ever see them again. The next morning, I went to the office as usual. Collected some documents. Made some calls. Acted completely normal. Then I left for what everyone thought was a routine trip to Vienna for talks with European officials. I actually did go to Vienna. I actually did attend the first day of meetings. Everything was legitimate. Everything was documented. My trip was official. On the second day, I didn't show up to the conference. Instead, I went to a different building. The Austrian Ministry of Interior. And I requested political asylum. I sat in a grey office with a grey desk and told an Austrian official that I was a Christian, that I would be executed if I returned to Iran, and that I was requesting protection under international law. The official looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Do you understand what you're saying? Do you understand what this means? I understand perfectly. I'm defecting. I'm requesting asylum. I cannot go back. He asked me to wait. Left the room. I sat there for 2 hours. Shaking. Praying. Terrified that somehow Vivek already knew. That they'd demand my extradition. That Austria would send me back. But they didn't. After what felt like forever, the official returned with others. More questions. Hours of questions. They needed to verify my identity, my position, my claims. They needed to be sure this wasn't some kind of trick or trap. I told them everything. Showed them evidence of my position. Explained my conversion. Named the believers who'd been arrested. Gave them details only an insider would know. By the end of that day, I was officially under Austrian protection. A defector. An asylum seeker. A traitor to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And a free follower of Jesus Christ. The first few weeks were chaotic. Debriefing after debriefing. Security protocols. Relocation to a safe house. New identity documentation. Learning how to live as a target, because that's what I was now. Iran doesn't forgive defectors, especially not high-ranking ones. Especially not ones who convert to Christianity. There would be a price on my head. Assassins looking for me. Always. The Austrian and eventually other Western intelligence agencies wanted to know everything I knew. And I told them. Everything. Not because I wanted revenge on Iran. But because I wanted to help. I wanted to use what I knew to protect people. To maybe, somehow, make a difference. But the hardest part wasn't the interrogations or the security concerns or the adjustment to a new life in hiding. The hardest part was my family. I couldn't contact them. Couldn't explain. Couldn't say goodbye properly. They woke up one morning to the news that I had defected. That I was a traitor. That I had converted to Christianity. My wife divorced me immediately. She had to. For her own protection. For our daughter's protection. The state confiscated our assets. My family was investigated. Harassed. My mother-in-law was detained for questioning. My wife had to publicly denounce me. Had to call me a traitor, an apostate, a disgrace. My daughters were removed from their school. The good school I'd worked so hard to get them into. They were bullied. Called daughters of a traitor. My oldest was 13. My youngest was 9. And their world fell apart because their father chose Jesus. That almost broke me. Actually, almost broke me. There were nights in that first year when I questioned everything. When I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. When I thought about what my choice had cost my children. When I wept until I had nothing left. I wanted to contact them. Tell them I loved them. Explain why I'd done what I'd done. But I couldn't. Any contact would put them in danger. Would make their lives harder. Would give the authorities leverage. The kindest thing I could do for my daughters was to let them hate me. Let them believe I'd abandoned them. Let them move on. I haven't spoken to them in 7 years. 7 years? My youngest is 16 now. My oldest is 20. I've missed everything. Their teenage years. Their graduations. Their lives. I have no idea who they become. If they're okay. If they ever think about me. If they understand. If they'll ever understand. That's the cost. That's what following Jesus cost me. Not just my career or my country or my reputation. My children. The 2 people I loved more than anyone in the world except Jesus himself. And I would do it again. God help me, I would do it again. Because as much as I love my daughters, as much as I miss them, as much as it destroys me that they grew up without their father, I love Jesus more. I love truth more. I love eternal life more than temporary comfort. That sounds harsh. I know it does. But it's what Jesus said, isn't it? Anyone who loves father or mother or son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he was right. He has to be first. Has to be worth everything. Or he's worth nothing. I live in Europe now. I can't tell you exactly where. I still have security concerns. There are still people looking for me. But I'm free. Free to worship openly. Free to read my Bible in public. Free to go to church without fear. Free to tell people about Jesus without whispering. I work with an organization that supports persecuted Christians, particularly in Iran and the Middle East. I use my experience, my knowledge, and my language skills to help. I train people going into restricted countries. I help plan smuggling operations for Bibles and Christian literature. I advocate for imprisoned believers. I tell my story to raise awareness and funds. It's not prestigious work. I'll never be a high-ranking diplomat again. Never represent a nation or negotiate treaties or see my photograph in newspapers. I live modestly. Quietly. Carefully. But I'm doing what I was made for. I'm serving the true King. I'm using my gifts for the kingdom of God. And I have peace. Real peace. The peace that Henrik asked me about in Brussels. The peace I didn't have when I had everything. The peace I have now that I've lost everything. Because I haven't really lost everything. I've lost a lot. But I've gained Christ. And He is enough. More than enough. I think about my old life sometimes. The power. The prestige. The respect. The comfort. And I don't miss it. Not really. It was empty. Beautiful on the outside. Hollow on the inside. Like those golden domes on mosques in Tehran that shine in the sun but are just covering up concrete. What I have now is real. It's hard and it's painful and it costs me every single day. But it's real. Jesus is real. His love is real. His presence is real. The fellowship of believers is real. The hope of heaven is real. The purpose of advancing His kingdom is real. And one day, I'll see my daughters again. Maybe in this life if God is merciful. Maybe only in the next. But I'll see them. And I'll be able to explain. And if they've come to know Jesus too, if somehow, despite everything, God draws them to Himself, then we'll have eternity together. That's the hope I cling to. That's what gets me through the hard nights. The knowledge that this separation is temporary. That God is still working, still pursuing, still calling. And that the same voice that called me out of Tehran might one day call my daughters out of darkness into His marvelous light. I want to tell you why I'm sharing this story tonight. It's not to make myself look heroic. I'm not a hero. I'm a coward who ran away from his family. I'm a traitor who abandoned his country. I'm a weak man who couldn't keep living the lie but also couldn't find a better way to handle it. I'm sharing this story because I want you to know that Jesus is real. That He's worth it. That He changes everything. If you're watching this and you're a Muslim who's questioning, who's searching, who's wondering if maybe Islam isn't the whole truth, I want you to know you're not alone. There are thousands of us. Tens of thousands. Secret believers and former Muslims who found Jesus. And we all struggled with the same questions. The same fears. The same sense that we were betraying our families and our culture and everything we'd been taught. But we found something better. Someone better. We found the truth that sets you free. And yes, it costs. It costs terribly. But what you gain is worth infinitely more than what you lose. Don't let fear keep you from investigating. Don't let tradition keep you from asking questions. Don't let family pressure keep you from seeking truth. Read the Bible for yourself. Compare it to the Quran. Look at the life of Muhammad and the life of Jesus. Ask yourself which one you'd want to follow. Which one actually lived without sin? Which one loved his enemies? Which one died for you? And if you're a Christian watching this, comfortable and safe in a free country, I want to challenge you. Don't take your freedom for granted. Don't waste it. Don't treat your faith like a hobby or a cultural identity or a Sunday morning routine. People are dying for this. Right now. Today. In Iran. In Afghanistan. In North Korea. In Nigeria. In China. Believers are being imprisoned, tortured, killed for following Jesus. They're losing everything. And they count it as joy. As a privilege. As worth it. What are you willing to sacrifice? What does your faith cost you? If following Jesus doesn't cost you anything, if it doesn't change anything, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable or unpopular or different, then you have to ask yourself if you're really following Him at all. Jesus said, "Take up your cross and follow me." Not take up your comfort. Not take up your prosperity. Not take up your safe, easy, culturally acceptable religion. Take up your cross. The instrument of your death. And follow Him to wherever He leads, even if it's to suffering and loss and sacrifice. Because He's worth it. He really is worth it. I lost my career. Lost my country. Lost my family. Lost everything I'd worked 43 years to build. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because what I gained, who I gained, is worth infinitely more. Jesus is not a religion. He's not a set of rules or rituals or philosophical principles. He's a person. He's alive. He's real. And He wants a relationship with you. Not your performance. Not your perfection. Not your religious credentials. You. The real you. The broken, searching, questioning, doubting, scared you. He's calling you right now. The same way He called me in that car in Tehran traffic. The same way He's been calling humanity for 2,000 years. Come to me. All who are weary and burdened. And I will give you rest. That's not a metaphor. It's a literal invitation. Come to Jesus. Tell Him you need Him. Tell Him you can't save yourself. Tell Him you're tired of pretending. Tell Him you want the truth, whatever it costs. And He'll answer. I promise you He'll answer. Maybe not in the way you expect. Maybe not on your timeline. But He'll answer. He'll make Himself known. He'll give you the faith to believe. He'll give you the courage to follow. And yes, it might cost you. Probably will cost you. But what you gain will be worth it. Peace with God. Forgiveness of sins. Eternal life. Purpose. Hope. Joy. Freedom. Truth. And most of all, Jesus himself. The one your soul was made for. The one you've been searching for your whole life without knowing it. I can't go back to Iran. I'll probably never go back. There's a death sentence waiting for me there. But I don't regret leaving. I only regret that I didn't leave sooner. That I wasted so many years serving the wrong things. Believing the wrong things. Missing the one thing that actually mattered. Don't waste your life the way I wasted the first half of mine. Don't spend decades climbing a ladder only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. Don't sacrifice everything for success and power and respect and then realize at the end that you missed the whole point of existence. The point is Jesus. Always has been. Always will be. He's the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. That's not arrogant. That's not narrow-minded. That's just true. And truth doesn't change based on our feelings or our culture or our preferences. Jesus rose from the dead. That's a historical fact. It's documented. It's attested. It changed the world. And if it's true, if he really did conquer death, then everything else is secondary. Then nothing else matters except how you respond to him. You can reject him. You can ignore him. You can be offended by the exclusive claims of Christianity. That's your choice. Your freedom. But you can't say you weren't told. You can't say you didn't know. Because now you do. You've heard the testimony of someone who gave up everything to follow him. And you have to decide what to do with that. I pray that you'll choose Jesus. I pray that you'll have the courage to investigate. To ask questions. To seek truth even if it's costly. To follow wherever the evidence leads. To surrender to the one who made you and loves you and died for you. And if you do, if you take that step of faith, you'll never regret it. You might lose things. I will lose things. But you'll gain everything that actually matters. Everything that lasts. Everything that's real. Jesus is waiting. He's been waiting for you your whole life. Stop running. Stop hiding. Stop pretending. Come home. If this story has impacted you, if it's made you think, if it's stirred something in your heart, I want to ask you to do something. Share this video. Don't keep it to yourself. There are people in your life who need to hear this. Muslims who are questioning. Christians who are comfortable. Seekers who are searching. People who are one testimony away from a decision that could change their eternity. Hit the subscribe button. There are more stories like this. More testimonies from people who've encountered Jesus in powerful ways. More evidence that he's real and active and still changing lives. Stay connected. Keep learning. Keep seeking. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me your questions. Tell me your doubts. You're a soul that matters. A person Jesus loves. And I want to help however I can. And like this video. I know that sounds trivial, but algorithms are real. The more engagement this gets, the more people will see it. The more lives that might be changed. Your click matters. Your share matters. Your engagement could be the thing that puts this testimony in front of someone who desperately needs to hear it. This is not just content. This is not entertainment. This is life and death. Eternal life and eternal death. And I'm asking you, begging you, to help spread this message. To help spread the hope of Jesus. To be part of the great work that God is doing in our world. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring enough to make it to the end. May God bless you. May He reveal Himself to you. May He give you courage to follow wherever He leads. And may you discover, like I did, that Jesus is worth everything. Absolutely everything. Subscribe. Like. Comment. Share. And most importantly, seek Jesus. He's waiting for you. Don't make Him wait any longer.